Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about lighting a scene, a Flash file scene, or a scene that you're going to render to a Flash movie. Now, the SWF renderer for Amorphium can currently only use one light. So if you have multiple lights in your scene, you'll get some weird artifacting where some shadows will get deleted and it'll do this weird kind of intersection. So I would recommend just dealing with one light in your Flash renders. Otherwise you'll get some weird artifacting, and sometimes it'll just randomly pick which light is going to be the light in the scene. So just use one light when you're working with Flash movies. So anyway, I've got, just to show a little bit of how different types of lights work within a Flash render, I've got right now just a parallel light in this. Well, I have actually a parallel light and a spotlight, but right now the parallel light is the only one set to render right now. And if I go to my top view, you can see my parallel light there aiming at my character. And I've got this floor that kind of scoops up into the back here. I don't want an outline on the floor, so I want it to just be a white background. So anyway, let me go to my front view here, my camera view again. And now, since lights can cast shadows and objects can cast shadows, when you render a Flash movie, you can actually have it, as long as you have in the render settings shadows turned on, then your objects that are set to cast shadows will cast shadows on each other. So let me just render a quick still of this. I've got outlines on it and cartoon shading. So I'm going to go ahead and render a still here. Go in. Okay, now you can see my Flash rendered movie of this little still of this little penguin character. And you can see the shadow being casted on the floor. And because my light is at the angle it's at, you know, I'm not getting very many shadows here on him, on the character itself, and I'm not getting much definition in the feet. Now, this is just something to play with within Flash renders. Your placement of your light is going to give you better depth in your character based on where the shadows lay on the character, especially if you have organic shapes, like a character face that, like the face of this character is built out of multiple objects. But if I were to say build a face that was totally organic out of one object, I'd want to have a little bit more dramatic lighting so that the surface of the object comes out a little bit more defined. So I'm going to go ahead and go to a top view here, and I'm going to move my light a little bit because I want a little bit more dramatic shadow. So I'm going to go up a little bit and over to the left. So I come back to a camera view. See, I'm going to get a little bit more defined shadowing on the character. So let me go ahead and render this again so you can see what I'm talking about here. Okay, so now you can see a little bit more definition in the shadows, and it's just a matter of playing with it and coming up with the type of lighting angle that you want based on how the shadows lay on your object. And this is probably a little too dramatic for this character, but anyway, it just gives you an example of how you can, just by placing your lights in different positions, you can get more shading on your object. Now I've got a spotlight in here. Let me show you how spotlights work when rendering, because parallel lights will light the complete entire scene and then also cast shadows on your objects, where a spotlight, if you adjust the radius of your cone angle to be smaller like I have here, it's going to do similar to what it did when the parallel light was casting shadows on the character here, except it's going to make a hard-edged shadowed area where light is not falling on the rest of my scene. So let me render this so you can see that as well. Okay, so now you can see with the spotlight, I'm getting shadows not only on the character here and on the floor, but it's putting the area where the spotlight is only shining, it's lighting up, and everywhere where it's not, it's actually shadowing. So you can use spotlights to give yourself that, kind of spotlight little spot on your objects based on the cone angle. Now, if you were to adjust the shadow radius for the light, this line would still be a hard edge line. It works with a 50% gray threshold, so wherever you adjust that, it's not going to do a soft shadow. It will always be a hard edge shadow in the render. So keep that in mind, that if you try to make soft shadows by adjusting the radius, it's going to still be a hard edge. And what I mean by radius is when you come into your light properties here, your light radius, even though it's set to 6, if I were to set this to some type of radius to get a soft edge shadow, it won't give you a soft edge shadow. It will only render a hard edge in Flash. So same thing with point lights. Point lights will, based on how close they are to the object, will leave a little round dot based on how much it's lighting the scene, and the light radius of the point light does the same thing, leaves a hard edge line. So, and that's based mostly on the fact that Flash is limited to vector lines. So if you want soft edge shadows, render to a bitmap and then import the JPEG sequence into Flash. So that's basically how lights work within Flash renders and the way you would use them to create shadows on your objects.